After putting in so many hours with the Dead Space 1 remake, I finally found the time to move on to Dead Space 2. I've heard from others that this game is the best in the trilogy, but after playing the first, I was skeptical. How could this sequel improve on the great foundation that the first game established? Could it take the mechanics from before and make them better? Well, in my opinion, I think this game does all of that and more. After going through this for the first time, it's a shame that this game isn't getting a remake because it definitely deserves one. Let's start off with what I think is the most important aspect of this game, the atmosphere. If you played the original Dead Space, then you know that this game has a level of horror and tension that will keep you tense at all times. So going into 2, I was expecting the same thing, and I got even more. Now this could be due to the TV I was playing on or my PC settings, but I thought this game was darker than before. And I don't mean in a story sense, I mean literal darkness. There were so many times I would encounter necromorphs while being in an area and think to myself, damn, this area is really dark. But that only added to the horror aspect, as wandering around dark areas only to be surprised by a necromorph never gets old. Another thing this game did well was making you feel like you were truly alone. As you progress through each chapter, there's this feeling of isolation that has returned that is truly terrifying. It's not scary in the fact that it will jump scare you or something, but it's the realization that nobody on the ship actually knows how to kill these things better than you. At least before, in the first game, you started out with a crew, but in this second one, you're pretty much by yourself for the majority of the game. Even when you do meet an important character later on, they're not by your side during every mission, so this fact still remains true. I just think that if I was in Isaac's position on the ship, I'd be scared shitless trying to kill all these things knowing that I wasn't going to get any help whatsoever. Even when walking around and exploring the areas, I think the tension never stops. You could be inside a bathroom or walking down a hallway and you'll hear the screams of people getting their flesh ripped apart or getting killed by a necromorph somewhere near where you're at. And what makes it scarier is the fact that it sounds like they're somewhere nearby, as you can hear them clearly, but the game purposely keeps them out of reach, making their screams hurt that much more, as you may want to help them, but literally can't. Then add on the hallucinations that Isaac was having throughout this game, and the horror aspect surpasses what was done before. The sounds you hear during these hallucinations or flashbacks are jarring, and the visuals help to depict the feeling of what Isaac is going through during those moments. During my entire playthrough of this game, there wasn't a moment where I wasn't on my toes or constantly overlooking each area, because the tension was really that high. For a title that established itself as a survival horror type of game, this game does a hell of a job at delivering on the horror aspect. The gameplay for Dead Space 2 is almost identical to the first, but with some cool tweaks to give the game its own bit of flair. If you have played the first, then you already know how this goes. You play as Isaac in a third-person perspective inside a spacesuit as you go from area to area, accomplishing objectives while killing necromorphs. Since I did play the first game, all this felt so natural and smooth, like there was almost no transition from the last game to this one. So if you remember how to play in that, you'll pick up the mechanics in this game just as fast. With that in mind, one of the bigger things that took me by surprise was how the weapons were implemented. Before in 1, you would find the weapons organically by wandering into different areas inside the Ishimura. Once you found that specific room, someone or something might be holding the weapon, and then you could take it and add it to your inventory. However, in the sequel, once you reach the store, you see that all the weapons are available for purchase right from the start. I actually love this change because it allowed me to pick my weapon loadout from the very beginning. Before, you're forced to only use what you have found, and the game limits you to what you can find based on what chapter of the game you're currently on. So if you're in chapter 1 of the first game, assuming this isn't a new game plus run, the only weapon you're going to have is the plasma cutter. However, in 2, I could use not only that, but the rifle, contact beam, and my favorite, the force gun. At first, I wasn't sure why I gravitated to the force gun, but after using it, it dawned on me. This weapon is nothing more than Dead Space's version of the Thunder Gun from Call of Duty Zombies. It does the exact same thing, as with the press of a button, it sends a giant wave that blows back and shreds necromorphs. This weapon is the one I use the most by far during my playthrough, as it just works on everything. Considering that you can get cornered easily, this gun comes in so clutch. Being able to clear out paths without using too much ammo, and then the ammo itself being cheap, makes this weapon superior over the rest. Now, just because I'm a massive fan of the force gun doesn't mean that the other guns aren't good as well. All of them, if used correctly, are pretty good. The contact beam is one weapon that I slept on for the majority of the game that I wish I wouldn't have. At first, I was like, man, this gun sucks. It's just a beam. Then when I realized the damage that it causes once you upgraded it, I started to use it way more. Many times, just one shot of the beam would insta-kill these necromorphs. The only downside of this gun is the reload speed is pretty slow, but you could upgrade that to help mitigate that downside. Other than that, this gun is the one that may look like something you should skip, but if you choose to play this game, I would say give it a shot, as it's a lot better than it looks. Now, I've mentioned the upgrades multiple times already, and those work just like they did in the original. All over each area and hidden locations or on wall panels, there are nodes that serve as the upgrade tokens to apply the upgrades to your weapons. I'm not completely sure of this, but I don't think you could upgrade your stasis module in the first game, so being able to do that was a nice change. Assuming I'm right. Even still, you could upgrade all your weapons plus your suit, with the game giving you the ability to reset your nodes for a fee later on. I thought that these nodes were either harder to find or there was just less of them in this game than before. I played this game on normal, so I didn't expect there to be less spawns, but for some reason I just didn't have as many as I thought I would have. Because of this, I had to be a bit more calculated with what I was choosing when I wanted to upgrade. I couldn't just choose any old thing, but instead use every upgrade so that it could have an instant impact on the gameplay, which is how I think the mechanic should work. The upgrade system in Dead Space 2 is simple and easy to understand, and it gives incentive to the player to explore every area in its entirety to try and find as many of these as possible. This game did feature new puzzles and minor tweaks that took a second to understand. The first being these switches that will close off open areas to keep you from being thrust into space. Many times over the game, windows or doors will break, causing everything in the area to get sucked out of the room and thrown into space. To prevent this from happening to you, you have to shoot these triangle-shaped switches at the top of these doors to close them and keep yourself in the room. This is a really easy concept to understand, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't die a couple times doing this. But once I understood what to do, these got really easy to get through. Another new feature were these little circuit breaker puzzles. When trying to get to a new door, sometimes the door would be locked and you would have to unlock it by turning this dial until the color matches blue. Once it matches blue, you could continue hacking the door or whatever you want to call it until you do it 3 times. After 3 times, the door unlocks. Just like the previous mechanic, this is easy to pick up on too, just another small gameplay addition that makes things different than before. However, the gameplay in Dead Space 2 isn't all good. There are some things that I just could not stand. The first were some of the new enemy types. As with a lot of things in this game, if you played the first, you'll recognize the majority of the enemies in this one. All these necromorphs had different things that you'll remember them for, but out of all the enemies in the game, there's one that was absolutely infuriating. And it was these chicken-like necromorphs. I hated these things. I have no idea who designed these enemies, but you're just evil. I'm just gonna call them chickens for the sake of discussion, but these chickens would always appear in these maze-like areas. So when you approach these areas, you would hear noises and not know where it's coming from. Then all of a sudden, a chicken comes out of nowhere and runs at you extremely fast, and if you let it catch you, then it would do this strong rain attack that would knock you off your feet. But what makes it worse is that after doing this attack, they quickly turn around and run in a random direction, giving you no time to try and shoot them. Add on the fact that there could be like 10 of these in one maze, and these encounters were literally hell. The only way to get these things to stop running is to use your stasis module and freeze them in place so you could actually get some shots in. But as you probably guessed, you will run out of stasis eventually, so this strategy only works for so long. What saved me with these things was using the force gun to knock them down and slow them up for a second so I could then shoot them with something else. With these maze-like sections appearing multiple times over the course of the game, I despise these encounters so much. Every one was a pain to get through. Another critique I have is the enemies spawning in from behind you is still present in this game. There is nothing worse than being in a tight room with multiple enemies in front of you, and as you're dealing with those, more spawn in from behind and start hitting you too. It's not that I didn't like trying to fight all the necromorphs, but with the game movement as slow as it is, it's not really designed to be fighting so many enemies all at once. You're limited in how fast you can react to what's in front of you, and then when you add on more stuff from behind, it gets overwhelming. To go along with that, I thought it was kinda hard to tell when a fight was actually over. Many times I'd kill a whole wave of necromorphs and think, finally, I'm done, as the music would stop and everything slows down. Then in the same area, I walk to a different spot a couple feet over, and all of a sudden another necromorph spawns out of nowhere. This happened so many times that I had to double check each area within a room because I didn't want to be surprised by an enemy popping in from a window or door within the wall. Just an annoying mechanic that needed to be tweaked some. Moving on from the negatives, another thing I wanted to mention was the boss fights. There isn't a lot of bosses in this, but I think what you fight is actually pretty cool. The different types of necromorphs that you see are clearly made to challenge you. I think that if we had even more boss fights, then it would add another layer to the gameplay, but considering the age of this game, I think what we got was plenty. It would be so cool to have one near the end of every chapter, or maybe every other chapter, as it would cap off the story segments a lot better. The last thing I wanted to mention is more of a recommendation. As I already mentioned, you are pretty much alone during the entire game just like the first, but I think something that could be really cool is if you had a partner to help you out at certain times. Like it would be great if you fought a boss and you had a buddy alongside you to help fight it. This partner doesn't have to stay with you for the entire game, but for certain segments that would add some spice to the gameplay. If you want to look at it from another lens, the companion doesn't even have to be human. With this game having such advanced technology, there's no reason why we couldn't spawn in a sort of robot protector to help us during battle. Almost like the Civil Protector in COD Zombies or something similar. Being able to bring in help would have been a cool mechanic I would have loved to see. Even if by doing this the fights would be harder, I wouldn't mind. Regardless, this was just a cool idea that I thought of as I got towards the end of my playthrough. To sum it up, the gameplay for Dead Space 2 mirrors the first in almost every way while adding a couple new things, so it's not an exact copy-paste. Some of the same bullshit stuff with the necromorphs is still present, but once you've seen it once, you'll get used to it and know how to counteract it. This gameplay is still very addicting and just a blast to go through. Killing necromorphs really doesn't get old. The story for Dead Space 2 is what caught me by surprise. I loved the story for the first game, but going into the sequel I had no idea what to expect. I wasn't sure where the story was going to pick up from, or how we were even going to be fighting necromorphs again after how the first game initially ended, but all of that was made clear right from the beginning. Avoiding spoilers, but sometime after the first game we find ourselves on yet another ship with another marker and we must survive against the necromorphs that have taken over everything. Again. How we got into this situation, why we were in that situation, and who was responsible is all told to us slowly over the course of 15 chapters. Compared to the first, this game started off with a lot more mystery surrounding Isaac specifically. Before, we had no idea why the ship was the way it was, whereas this time it was more like, why are we in this situation? As the focus this time around was more on Isaac for a lot of the game, and I think that was a good thing. After growing attached to Isaac, it's easy to grow that attachment by having us go through more traumatizing events with that same character. What I think was done better with this plot is the plot twists. A good amount of information is given to you throughout the story, but I think after a certain chapter, this game just turns the dial all the way up. In the beginning, it seems like the mission is clear and you know what you need to do and who's going to help you. But then in just one instant, all of that changes and now you don't know what's going to happen next. One thing I appreciated this time was how the interactions between the characters wasn't just in the video calls. Those are still present, but there are moments where you'll meet up with people and it's just cutscene or you'll see it all in game. It's nice because it doesn't give that sense of repetition that was present in the first. Seeing these characters in real time interact with each other adds a small bit of immersion that may get overlooked when actually playing the game. What this plot does so well is making everything feel connected. Just like before, there's audio and video files that you can find in every area that gives context to more than the area you're in. They give more context and may elaborate on what deceased people were doing that gives the player more in terms of the lore in this universe. Of course, not all of these are important, but I think they are all worth reading or listening to at least once. Knowing what was going on before you got to that specific place helps to paint a picture of other events that were happening while you were doing something else, which is a nice touch. Earlier I mentioned flashbacks and hallucinations, and at first, I thought the hallucinations were really annoying, but as I got deeper into the story, it made more sense. Avoiding spoilers, but Isaac is still struggling with the whole situation surrounding Nicole and hallucinates seeing her over the course of the game. These moments always come out of nowhere and interrupt the gameplay flow, but I think they add some tension and distraction within the story that makes it a bit more realistic. Like if you were Isaac killing all these necromorphs and seeing all this death, you would probably start seeing things too, right? Regarding the flashbacks, you do board the issue more for story reasons, and while on there, you see moments from the past with what happened in the original game. These hit different as seeing them again made you feel the weight of what Isaac went through before. After bringing up all the trauma from the first game, it just made me feel even worse for the guy. Like he somehow survived by the skin of his teeth the first time around, and now he's stuck in a similar situation all over again. By the time I reached the ending, I was left satisfied. The game's story concluded in a way that I was expecting, but the order of events were different than I had envisioned. On top of that, the game calls back to the first with how the final scene in this being a recreation of the last scene in the first, but with a happier ending this time. I think that if the series were to have ended with 2, it very well could have because this game ended on a solid note, but considering Dead Space 3 was created, that wasn't the case. In its entirety, Dead Space 2 doesn't do anything revolutionary with its plot to make it miles better than 1's, but it's all the intricacies added within the plot that make it better. The plot twists and action sequences are still there to give you some surprises, but at its core it's about Isaac and his internal struggle after the events of 1. And after going through this myself, I think this was the right direction to take this story. So if you enjoyed the story in 1, you'll like this story just as much, or maybe more. Overall, Dead Space 2 is a great game that wasn't just a clone of the first. It added a couple new gameplay tweaks while giving us a solid story that has some callbacks to before that fans will recognize immediately. The horror aspect is done very well. It helps to make you feel like you're actually Isaac stuck on the ship. The tension is palpable and that can be felt from the opening cutscene. For those reasons, I want to give this game a 9. Even though this game is better than the first, I can't give it a higher score because this game does need a remake. Comparing how this looks to the original's remake is like night and day, but because of that, it's unfair to dock it points just because it's not a remake. I really enjoyed so much about this game, and it's a shame that EA doesn't want to give this game the attention it deserves because many fans, including myself, would buy this immediately. Unfortunately, it may be a long time before this ever gets remade. Nonetheless, I'm excited to try out Dead Space 3 and see if that game really deviates from the formula as much as I've heard. Hopefully it's not as bad as people have said, but only time will tell. What did you think about Dead Space 2? Did you like this more than 1? Or are you hearing about this game for the first time? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to watch one of my other reviews right here.